Hey everybody, I wanted to start off by saying how well you guys did last week on your discussions. I've been reading through. I didn't get a chance to personally go through and respond to everybody like I like to usually do. But just having read, it looks like you guys had really good discussions, and this is probably the best week of discussions that I've seen, even in teaching over the last year that I've taught here at Indiana Wesleyan. So kudos. I think you guys have definitely opened up, and I think that's one thing that is important in the social work program is to be self-aware. Understand what your strengths are, understand what your limitations are, your values, your morals, things of that nature. So I just wanted to say, good job. I've definitely seen some growth, even from week one, with some of you in your responses and how you're writing and things like that. So definitely wanted to say good job. So week 5, hard to believe how fast this is going. So here in Indianapolis, we're going to look to have some beautiful weather this weekend. So hopefully you guys can get out and enjoy it. I wanted to take a look at a few things in this video. I hope these have been beneficial for you as we go through week to week. Wanted to start out by looking at the devotion, and just a kind of quick hit on that with the verse itself. One of the things that kind of came to my mind was looking at our clients and the challenges that they face, even as recent as the individual I'm working with. I shared in the email that he came out of DOC. He actually got released on Monday. And so looking at the fear of coming out, he's going to be homeless. He doesn't really have any family. What does that look like for him? So in order to, really kind of hit these challenges head on, they have to face them head on. And sometimes they may be what we like to call ambivalent to change. And part of it is because they're afraid of change. We often try to make changes ourselves, whether it's exercise more, eat less, eat healthier, don't smoke, whatever the case might be, and looking at our own ambivalence to change. Why can't we change the things in our lives? So that, in the devotion really stuck out to me this week. Looking at discussion, we're going to look at chapter 9, and one of the things that really stuck out to me was on page 280 and 281, just the steps to working with and intervening with a client. So you're looking at engagement, you're looking at assessment, you're looking at intervention, you're looking at evaluation and termination. Quick note on termination. Termination starts at the beginning of working with the client. Really preparing that client to be self-sufficient, helping that client understand that you're only in their lives for a short period of time. And so really trying to help draw out the strengths that they have, kind of like we talked about last week, can really work towards helping these individuals, make lifelong changes. So looking at the assessment, the book breaks it down really well. And on page 274, it talks about, how to do a really good assessment. One of the things it talks about is open-ended and closed-ended questions. And on the next page, 275, and then even subsequent pages, 276 and 277, it talks a lot about how to ask those questions. Don't lead with why. It would come from an accusatory standpoint. Why did you do such and such? As opposed to, tell me how you felt about this when such and such happened. If they relapsed, or if they're stuck in a domestic violence situation, why are you going back? So if you have someone in a domestic violence situation, you say, why are you going back to that person? Don't you know that they are abusive? That really comes off as just really derogatory and demeaning to that individual. However, if you state it, can you tell me a little bit more about why you would want to go back to this relationship? Now it's putting the ownership on them to be able to tell their story. And that's really, from an assessment standpoint, the biggest thing is really just to get them to be able to open up and tell their story. in reading this chapter and having done assessments for as long as I have, the biggest thing that I can think of is doing an assessment is you're trying to build their story. You're trying to gain an understanding of why they believe such a way. Think about some of the things that you've wanted to change in your own life. Again, maybe eating, maybe smoking, whatever the case might be. Instead of saying you need to change this, coming from a perspective of, well, tell me why you believe this is a change that needs to happen. So it's putting ownership on you. If then you start telling your story that I started smoking cigarettes back behind the barn when I was 9, and you're 39. Then as someone doing the assessment, I can think, okay, this is a person who's had a 30-year addiction. They're not going to be able to change this in the drop of a hat overnight. So really kind of getting to understand why individuals do things that they do, helping to understand their story is what you're trying to paint when you do a good assessment. So going back to page 280, talks about the assessment, collecting and organizing the client data, assessing for strengths and limitations. One of the biggest things is in the assessment, it talks about develop mutually agreed upon intervention goals. I think this is huge because if we have someone who comes to us and is homeless, and our goal for them is housing, and their goal is housing, our goal and their goal might look completely different. They may not know how to take care of an apartment. So maybe a sleeping room of some sort, or a roommate, or a halfway house is most appropriate for them. But we want to force this type of living on them. So really kind of coming to an understanding. And if they throw something out, such as in a domestic violence situation, I want to be self-sufficient. What does self-sufficient look like to that person? And asking those questions is definitely important. So looking at intervention, I think one of the things that's important, again, is to really build upon their strengths. So if a person wants to be self-sufficient and they're in a domestic violence situation, starting from the standpoint of when was the last time you've been out on your own? And if it's been 20 years, they might not know how to take care of their own finances because their abuser may have taken that money from them for decades. So helping them understand how to have a bank account, using their strengths in that they know how to cook and clean. So if they don't feel as if they can do it, encourage them by saying, look at all these things that you can do. You already know how to do these things. You just have to build the confidence in yourself to be able to do that. So really pull out their strengths. Evaluation, you're going to be looking at this in a couple classes when we look after statistics. So 2 classes back to back, statistics and research. One of the things that you'll do in research is look at single subject design. So there's a behavior, you implement the intervention, and then you're trying to see if that behavior decreases. So that's one way to kind of evaluate if things happen. Another thing you may or may not have heard or know about, or I don't know if other professors have talked about this, but MAPS goals is definitely important, or SPAM goals. Some people say SPAM, MAPS, whatever the case might be, it's the same acronym. So measurable, attainable, positive, and specific. So if you're setting a goal of self-sufficiency and you have a mother of 3 who's been homeless for 3 years, to say that they're going to be able to buy a $75,000 home in 6 months might not be realistic. It's measurable in that you gave yourself a 6-month time frame, but is it really attainable? So maybe in that type of situation, you have a mother of 3 who's became homeless because she lost her job, whatever the case might be. A MAPS goal might be to obtain temporary housing in the next 3 months. So we're able to measure it because we're going to measure it in 3 months. Did she meet her goal or not? Is it attainable? If she already has an income, that would be. If she is unemployable, that might not be obtainable, because she'd also have to find a job and resources for financing and things like that. It's positive because you're moving forward. Will obtain obviously is positive language, and is specific, so a temporary location. So when you're looking at evaluation, actually, so kind of combination assessment and evaluation, two things are the same, is to look at, so being able to create those measurable, attainable, positive, and specific goals from the very beginning, and then you're going to be able to evaluate whether you met those goals or not. If that same female comes to you and says, I need to find housing, and you say, okay, I'm going to put down on here a goal that you will obtain housing. It's not really telling us how long, where we want to get to, and things like that. So that's just something that's important to keep an eye on. Looking at the discussion questions, you're going to look at Chapter 10, and it explores different types of groups. So different phases of groups, and there's going to be a whole nother class devoted to this. So I'm not going to get too deep into it, besides what you're already looking at right now in this class. So just understanding the different types of groups, it really talks about the group formation, how to intervene within a group, and things of that nature. Like I said, there's going to be a whole nother class devoted to that. So the last thing is the Dropbox. And within the Dropbox, we're going to be looking at kind of macro level work. So I love macro level. When I took my policy class for my BSW, the very first class that I walked into, the professor had on the board, all social work is political. So and this is something that's really stuck with me for almost 10 years now. And as I think about it, the politics of funding, the social welfare policies that go into effect that affect us as social workers, things of that nature. So what we're going to do this week is take a look at a topic. You can look at the topic that you wrote about last week, and we're going to explore what policies and things like that really affect what that in that specific topic. So I know one person submitted something on substance abuse, so maybe looking at the heroin epidemic, and how the federal government, state and local governments are responding to that is definitely important. So one of the things I wanted to make sure you guys are aware of is, definitely look at, where is that at? In the assignment, it talks about, on number 5. So in Dropbox, under Dropbox, under 5, there's parentheses that says, note, Wikipedia, about.com, and similar unreliable internet sources are not appropriate for graduate level writing. So really watch your websites that you go to. I would really prefer that you guys kind of stay on NASW, and really explore the peer-related articles and things like that. Government reports are pretty good. Agency reports, sometimes I take with a grain of salt, partly because the agency's trying to show statistics for what they're wanting funding for and what their mission is to be able to work towards that mission. So really look at the peer-reviewed articles is the one thing that I would really encourage you to do. So I know I went long this time. It's been a minute, and I really appreciate you guys watching this. You guys are doing great in this class. Week 5, one more week after this, at least for this class. And if you need anything, feel free to call me, email me, text me, whatever the case might be. More than happy to respond. So I'll see you on cyberspace and discussions.